goal from Carlos Bocanegra. Lloyd will try alone here. What a goal from Lloyd. This is spectacular. It's hit with no regard for humanity. Is this the moment for Shaqiri? Yes, it is. Switzerland and Shaqiri have scored in the 90th minute. That was worth the price of admission alone.
This is Soccer Matters on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Brought to you by the Daspit Law Firm, DaspitLaw.com. From the Veritex Community Bank Studios, here's Glenn Davis.
All right, welcome into Soccer Matters, your soccer football station in Houston. We lead tonight. The Houston Dynamo, you might have heard it last night on 92.5. They now will have to go to a third and final game against Real Salt Lake on Saturday, 5 Central Time, 4:30 the pregame right here on ESPN 97.5. So the Dynamo went down last night, didn't lose the game. It was a draw, lost on penalty kicks. But technically over 90 minutes, didn't lose the game. So it sets up a third game now, and they're playing for it all at Shell Energy Stadium on Saturday. So you're going to want to get out to that one. And I've got tickets tonight. We're streaming at ESPN975.com. Call-in number 713-780-3776. 713-780-3776. And the show is always presented by John Daspit and the Daspit Law Firm, our presenting sponsors. So, boy, we got a lot to talk about here tonight. I'm hoping to hear from you. 713-780-3776. How you're feeling about the Houston Dynamo heading into the next game on Saturday at 5 p.m. at Shell Energy Stadium. We got a lot of sound here tonight, but one thing you always have to do, if you're a host of a show, you got to make sure you take care of your producer. And it's one thing that we always do. So today we brought in some great empanadas from Little Patagonia. So a big thank you to my great friend over at Little Patagonia. And we appreciate that. So, little take on the empanadas. How were they, Brian?
Yeah, we've had them a couple times before. You brought them in during the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup final. You brought them into the studio when we were all calling the game up here. And they're fantastic once again. I had a beef, I had a chicken. Both were great. Good. Okay, you got to fuel. You got to fuel like a champion. Yeah, Joe's got to fuel like a champion. I was feeling like a champion. Then Joe George ran in and stole one, and now I'm feeling less like a champion.
No. Joe's got to feel like a champion too.
Yeah,
everybody does. Everybody does. Sebastian Abraham. It's Little Patagonia. It's right near the station here, and then they've also got out on I-10. Patagonia, which is the steakhouse, Argentine steakhouse. So it's good stuff. That makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, his team, Boca Juniors, went down 2-1 in the Copa Libertadores final to Fluminense. We'll speak a little bit about that later on here. Okay, so here's what we got tonight. We've obviously got a lot of Dynamo talk here. Victor Ariza is going to jump on the show a little bit later. We've got the head coach of Texas A&M, G. Guerreri. They are in the NCAA tournament. Texas also got into the tournament under Angela Kelly. They're going to play Lamar on Friday. Actually, I'm going up to call that game on the Longhorn Network and then come back that night. And we've got Dynamo and RSL right here, and that is a huge, huge match as well. So these are matches of finality. This is a fun time of the year, both in the college game and in Major League Soccer, because stakes are high. And much like other playoff leagues, things change in the playoffs, and you saw it last night. I mean, there wasn't a lot of soccer played last night. I mean, there was some, but it was obvious that Real Salt Lake came out against the Houston Dynamo trying to break their rhythm because they are such a good, fluid passing team, and the Dynamo really kind of struggled to get it going in that game. That said, they were up 1-0. So we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. We got a lot of highlights as well from that game. 713-780-3776. 713-780-3776 is the number to call in here tonight. Another thing, it seems that people have not been able to let go of the fact that Lionel Messi won the Ballon d'Or. Should Erling Haaland have won it? You can make a case for it. Sure, he did the treble with Manchester City, broke the Premier League scoring record, of course. I mean, this is a guy that now has 39 goals in 34 UEFA Champions League games. He's over a goal a game, slightly over a goal a game. It's remarkable. But just to be clear, you have to remember who votes on the Ballon d'Or, the gold ball. National team coaches, captains, and journalists vote on the award. So if you don't agree Messi should have won it, those are the people you should be upset with. And I get it when people say, oh, he did the treble. Messi won the World Cup. It all depends on what the criteria of those 100 people are. National team coaches, national team captains, and journalists. So, if you want to make a claim for Erling Haaland, you want to make a claim for Lionel Messi, I got no problem with it. Awards are awards now. They seem to be demystified. Either of those choices would have been great for me. I was happy to see Messi get it because what he's contributed to the game overall. 713-780-3776, 713-780-3776 is the number to call in here tonight. Okay, so let's go back to, we did mention the Copa Libertadores, Fluminense and Boca Juniors. Let's go. This is soundbite number 12. Let's go to the 36th minute. Herman Cano opens the scoring for Fluminense to make it 1-0.
But Fluminense maintains possession. 10 minutes left to go. Regulation. Nice little give and go. Drop to the spot. Cano shot. Goal! 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 Fluminense! And it starts with a give and go on the far flank, and a lightning quick attack has given Flu the lead.
So there you go. Flu's got the lead until the 72nd minute. Luis Advincula scoring for Boca.
Out wide, Medina, Advincula. Not as adventurous as he had been in the past. The Peruvian across the 18, rifle to the back corner, and he's done it again! Wow! He slides through the top of the 18 and slices in his fourth of the tournament. We're tied at 1.
So 1-1, and then the dramatic game winner comes in the 99th minute from John Kennedy. Here it is.
Kennedy back to goal, lifted into the area, settled for Kennedy. The strike to the corner! Oh, what a build-up for Fluminense! And it is John Kennedy.
So there you go. Well, it's probably named after the former president. That's my gut. We'll do a little more research on John Kennedy. By the way, that was a dramatic, and I mean dramatic, game winner to win that. Just absolutely fantastic. So there you have it. All right. Speaking of Erling Haaland, they played, Man City played Young Boys today. All right. So here we go. Erling Haaland, 23rd minute penalty kick.
And Erling Haaland came out on top. The man who was a big doubt with ankle injury before the game scores the first goal of the game.
That's the 23rd minute. Phil Foden would make it 2-0 in the 46th.
Searching out Foden, trying to get beyond camera, and he has done, and he scored. Brilliant stuff from Phil Foden. Right on the strokes to 1-goal deficit. Foden doubles the lead.
By the way, Phil Foden is playing very well, and Erling Haaland will now make it in the 51st minute, 3-0. This is Young Boys of Switzerland they're playing.
Lewis for Haaland. Kovacic told to get out of the way, and that's why! What a hit from Erling Haaland. Oh, tremendous power. Applause all around the ground, and the coach, Pep Guardiola, joins in.
Yeah, Pep loves joining in. He's a pretty competitive guy, you would say, right? Yeah. Lazio 1-0 over Feyenoord. We keep an eye on Feyenoord because of Santi Jimenez, the Mexican national team player. But he's overshadowed Ciro Immobile. You know, many of you might think he retired. He hasn't. He scores the game winner. It's 200th goal for Lazio.
Good challenge to win it back came from Vecino. Clip forward over the top for the run of Immobile. Round the goalkeeper. And in. A milestone goal. And one of supreme significance. Immobile hits 200 for Lazio. And it's only fitting that he brings up such a significant moment with a goal of inestimable importance.
So that's big for Immobile, and of course 1-0 is the final score in that one. 200 goals for a club. That's pretty remarkable. 713-780-3776. 713-780-3776 is the number to call in here today. I got some women's football to talk about as well tonight, but we continue on with the Champions League. Of course, other results here today. Dortmund 2-0 over Newcastle, and that pretty significant result and a good result for Dortmund. I'm just seeing if we have any of that sound. Let's see here. I don't think we do. No, we don't have sound for that. We do have sound, though, for PSG and Milan. Skriniar in the 22nd minute opens the scoring. In the 9th minute for PSG to take a 1-0 lead.
Vitinha. Marquinhos! Oh, what a chance, and Skriniar has scored! The former Inter Milan player. It had to be him, didn't it?
And this game was at Milan. Rafael Leao will tie the game at the 12-minute mark. So 3 minutes later, Milan comes back to tie it up.
This is Giroud. That's a good save by Donnarumma. Leao, it's in! 1-1. Oh, Milan needed that. Leao needed it too. 10 games without a goal for club or country.
He broke the duck there. 50th minute, the game winner. By the way, Pulisic's playing. Yunus Musa's playing in this game. Olivier Giroud. I mean, this is the sickest of sick headers here. And this is the game winner in the 50th minute.
Here's Pulisic. And here's Leao. And Hakimi did just enough, although I think Leao was maybe a little slow to react. Theo Hernandez, though. And Giroud is there! And when Giroud is at the far post, there's only ever one outcome. He is such a good header of the ball. Milan lead, terrific cross, and it got just what it deserved from Olivier Giroud.
He is a great header of the ball. He's a great target, man. Meet me at the far post. That's where Giroud's going to be. And by the way, he's one of the ones that's rumored to potentially come to Major League Soccer. So if anybody wants a target, man, there is one. And that's a guy that I think if you're playing in a system where you just want a big aerial threat, a good guy in and around the box to occupy two center backs, you can get a lot out of him, I think, in Major League Soccer, depending on his ambition, that's for sure. But he has always seemed to be a highly professional guy. That's for sure. By the way, Spurs in the Premier League knocked off by Chelsea 4-1. Hat-trick for Jackson. And that moves Man City back to the top of the Premier League. And more bad news for Manchester United. It seems like they've got even more additional injury problems. We're going to talk about that. 713-780-3776. 713-780-3776. Barcelona losing today 1-0 to Shakhtar Donetsk. Lewandowski has continued to struggle to find his form. Xavi has only won 7 of 20 games in European competitions. He said, quote, "We're in a bad moment. It's a mental issue. We're blocked." They could not break down Shakhtar Donetsk today in the Champions League, the portion of it that I watched. Again, 713-780-3776. And for Boca Juniors losing to Fluminense, it's the last 3 Copa Libertadores finals they played in, 2012, 18, and now 23. They've gotten beaten in the final. They get there, but they got beaten in the final. So there you go.
On ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Brought to you by the Daspit Law Firm. From the Veritex Community Bank Studios, here's Glenn Davis.
LCD Sound System. Great song. Someone Great, it's called. Everybody's got someone great in their life, right, Brian?
Yeah, like people who bring you empanadas.
I don't know if that qualifies for greatness, but Hey, like I said, you got to fuel.
It doesn't hurt.
You got to fuel the
It's
man.
a good first step.
Listen, you carried us last night on the Dynamo Real Salt Lake game. You're carrying us tonight. We got to fuel you like a champion. We got to take care of you. All right, so I said LCD Sound System. 713-780-3776. The number to call in tonight, 713-780-3776 is the number to call in. All right, so look, we're going to get to Dynamo Talk in the next segment, and we're going to hit it really, really hard. We're going to talk about last night's game. I do want to get your opinions on it, 713-780-3776. Victor Ariza will join me also, and we'll talk about this game. Did you feel like the Dynamo were playing for penalties? Tell me what you thought about that. When I saw Aliou Ibrahim come on, I thought the Dynamo might leave him high, but he was back defending that whole time, pretty much. And I thought they would try to hit him in transition. But it seemed like the Dynamo were trying to just see out that 1-0 victory. Ben Olsen's been in plenty of these games. And the playoffs, things do change. It's funny because I don't watch a lot of NBA, but I always noticed in the past that when the playoffs came, all of a sudden guys were right in people's grills, one-on-one defending. And I don't think that's not different in MLS, because once you get to the point of finality, like RSL was at last night, and they were down 1-0, you begin to do things differently. And you heard the comment from Pablo Mastroeni before the game that in game one here in Houston, that Hector Herrera could have played the game holding a cup of coffee. So, we're going to see. The Dynamo are going to have to reestablish their game. Now, their game has been one that has aesthetically been so pleasing to watch. They have been on an exceptional run since the Leagues Cup. They won home field advantage, and that home field advantage has got to play a big part in it this weekend. So get out to that game. That's a 5 o'clock kickoff. We said last night on the show it was 3, but it's been changed. It's 5 o'clock. We've got more tickets to give away here tonight as well. All right, so Jane Campbell, the Houston Dash goalkeeper, best 11, well-deserved. She was, I think she was worth 9 points alone this year. I mean, you take away 9 points and you see where you're at. I mean, goalkeepers got to win you points. I thought she was exceptional. Another interesting thing is the former Dash coach, Juan Carlos Amoros, won the Coach of the Year, and he's got Gotham in the final. And that final is on Saturday. They will take on, I believe it's OL Reign for the NWSL title. This is a guy that's done crazy good work. That was the worst team in the league last year. Emma Hayes with the U.S. women now as the national team manager. So are we going to get a rebirth now under this coach? I think that's what's expected here. How much will she be expected to change the youth soccer landscape, the college game, and all this? How much influence can she really have, if at all? I think she can. One thing's for sure. She's going to get after it with the U.S. women's national team. And she's going to make it more about soccer, competition, and less of a commercial entity and a platform for social issues. And that's what I want. I don't want my sports mixed with politics. I want to see this U.S. women's national team get back to be what they once were, and that was a dominant team in the world. Now, as a dominant team in the world, they helped rise and help raise the tide, which basically all ships rose with the tide, which was all these other great soccer countries now that saw what the U.S. women were doing and said, you know what, we're going to invest in this. And with their cultures, they're going to be very good at it, whether it's the Germanys, the Netherlands, the Japans, on and on we go, the Swedens. They invest in it, the Dutch. They invested in it, and guess what? The competition now is off the charts. The focus has to be on football, and it wasn't in the last World Cup. And it was almost like it was an entitlement. We're just going there and we're going to win. Nah, those days are over. So she's a cut-to-the-chase type manager, formerly at Chelsea. So let's get back to winning World Cups and competing in the exciting competitive world of women's international soccer, which is continuing to grow. And that competitive world, by the way, was driven again by that early U.S. women's national team success. Youth, college, NWSL. I don't know. If you watch the NWSL, do the teams play too similar? And the NWSL is not going to be challenged by the big global soccer brands. It is being challenged already. And you're going to get top American talent now that are going to say, well, I want to go play in the Women's Premier League in England. And I want to go play in France because I'm going to be expected to play the game differently. I may be asked to do things tactically differently. And then I can put this in my toolkit, and it can improve me as a player. The players are smart now. And they do understand that there's certain directions you can take in your career that will improve you as a player, wherever your club situation is, whether it's a trip to play in Europe. And listen, in the past, a lot of women have gone to play in Germany in the past, in Australia, and they've kind of had to do it from a financial standpoint as well, but also for player development. But when you get the Barcelonas of the world, the Chelseas, the Arsenals now putting money into women's soccer, one, people are going to get paid more, but two, culturally, you're going to be in a different soccer culture. And those are big, massive brands. And those brands, Barcelona, those brands are all bigger than the entire NWSL. Okay? Nobody knows globally who the OL Reign is. Maybe them a little more because they're, connected to Leon. But Gotham FC, this is kind of an American league. So I do think they're going to be players making the choice to enhance their own game by going to foreign countries and to play for some of these bigger brands. They already are. And to add elements to their game, which is going to open up their choices beyond the NWSL. So what does this do? Increases the competition. The NWSL is going to have to step up its game. It's all healthy. And by the way, Hayes has U.S. roots, has coached on Long Island. Check this out. Coached Iona College out there, who, by the way, came into Austin this year to play Texas, Iona. And Texas under Angela Kelly is in the college NCAA tournament. Gone on a great run here. They won the Big 12 conference tournament, that's the last time for them because they're moving to the SEC. So Hayes also was an assistant at Arsenal, 2 years at the Chicago Red Stars, and then since 2012 at Chelsea Ladies. So a lot of experience there. Looking forward to seeing her turn it around. And I did mention Juan Carlos Amoros. Okay. You consider all that's going on now in the NCAA tournament, and you've got Texas, you got Texas A&M in it as well. G. Guerreri's going to be on the show a little bit later on tonight. We'll talk to him. They will have a home game on Friday. Who are they playing on Friday? I'm trying to remember. Texas is going to play Lamar. That's on LHN on Friday. That's in Austin, Mike A. Meyer Stadium. Ellis Field on Friday. It'll be G. Guerreri and Texas A&M. Not sure yet who they're taking on. I do know, but I know.
I think you said Colorado.
Yes, it is Colorado. Thank you. And that's why, again, empanadas on me again next week. Yes, Colorado, which is not going to be an easy game, according to G. But facilities, the care of athletes at these two places, when you think about it, it's off the charts. And it doesn't matter that it's women's soccer. They are taking care of like A-plus athletes that they are. And it's a little bit different than, soccer 15, 20, 25 years ago in the women's game with Title IX and everything. And not to mention the men's game. If you paid back then, when I look at these fields and these surfaces and these environments that are available in the college game, and let's face it, it's a trickle down from football programs. We know that. But it's exceptional. You can't hit a bad ball on these fields. You're not going to be blaming the field. That's for one thing. 713-780-3776. 713-780-3776 is the number to call in here tonight. I guess we can begin to transition into Dynamo talk. Dynamo 2-1 on penalties go down 5-4. Right now, we do have other Major League Soccer playoffs going on. It's 2-1 Atlanta right before halftime against the Columbus Crew. That's game 2 there. Chucho scored. So let's begin to get into Dynamo here. Okay, so it was made pretty clear before this game by Pablo Mastroeni that this was going to be an even more intensely aggressive game. So let's go to what is the first significant moment in this game. This is a 2-footed tackle by Justin Glad. He flies in. Now remember, he's coming back from injury. He's had an adductor injury, a groin injury. Okay, so it's a totally ill-timed tackle. Totally misses the ball and absolutely crushes Franco Escobar. Now, it's clear to me Justin Glad should have been sent off. It's a 2-footed tackle. Both feet are off the ground. Bazakos, the referee, did not make the call. Should have. It was a tough call to have had to make, but he should have. It was a clear penalty, but it was also a clear sending off for me. This was a tackle you might see in a park on a weekend with wannabe national team players, okay? This was that bad. Now, I would say don't expect a lot of this to change on Saturday because RSL is going to try to get tight on the Dynamo. Ojeda and all these guys in midfield are going to want to kick people. They're going to foul people. They want to break the Dynamo rhythm. And the Dynamo purpose of play is going to have to prove out better than the opponent's disruptive style. It's not to say that it's going to be a perfect, free-flowing game for them, but they are going to have to get more of the ball. I believe they will, and I think they're going to have a lot more good moments and passages of play, and I think the Dynamo will beat RSL on Saturday. And I think they'll do it in regulation. But they will have to be efficient with their finishing. So let's go back to the penalty. It's Bassi taking the penalty kick. He gets saved by McMath, and this is a harbinger, no doubt, for later on. But he does stuff in the rebound. Here's the call.
Here's Bassi against McMath to make it 1. The Dynamo save McMath. Bassi on the rebound has scored. 28th minute, the Houston Dynamo go up. Out comes the bow and arrow from the Moroccan magician. It is 1-0 Houston Dynamo in the 28th minute. He followed up the save penalty from McMath.
So McMath comes up with that save. The Dynamo, again, couldn't really find their passing rhythm and tempo. You got to credit the opponent. You also have to remember this is playoff soccer now. Sometimes you got to win ugly. And that's technically a win for RSL because of the penalty kicks. Not getting good possession made it difficult for the Dynamo to get Escobar and Griffin Dorsey forward in this game. But the middle of the field was chopped up, tackling, hitting, late challenges. Well over 30 fouls in this game. Wasn't the perfect referee you would want for a night like that, I don't think, if you're the Houston Dynamo and you're the team that plays more of the football. A lot of unforced errors, though, to go along with it by the Dynamo, so that's accountability there. And Ben Olsen making it clear things change in the playoffs. But no one played with velvet gloves in Sandy, Utah last night. Then Chicho Arango comes in the game, and he truly changes the game. And this was a possibility from the start. They have had injury problems. And the question is will he go from the start against the Dynamo on Saturday? And that's all dependent on his fitness, I think. He could be held out again by Pablo Mastroeni as the ace in the hole again to come off the bench in that game and change the total dynamics in that. There's a play now off a free kick. And off this free kick, Steve Clark elects to punch. I'm not being picky here because Clark has had a very, very good season. The Dynamo are an exceptional defending team. I think he could have caught it and kept possession and not presented a second ball to either team. So he punches it, goes out to the 18, and Coco Carrasquilla, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this, but I think he could have caught it. I don't think there were a lot of bodies around him. Who's me to be critical and say he should have caught it or punched? I think he should have caught it. Kept possession. You don't concede a second ball, which is a lot what RSL was playing for. So Coco has to foul at the top of the box, and then Jefferson Severino, the Venezuelan, hits a remarkable free kick.
There is just a ton of black and gold shirts in front of this free kick. It's going to be Severino. What a goal! It is all tied up, and it's a free kick that does it. And Severino has made it game on here for Real Salt Lake.
So the Dynamo would then hang on. They wouldn't concede a second. Arango's making a real difference. All of a sudden, RSL's playing better soccer. They produce some combination play and things. And it ends up, you can see both coaches are getting penalty takers on. Damir Krylak comes on for RSL. Ben Olsen brings on Thorolf Farsson, who's very, very good at penalties. And it really comes down to round one. Amin Bassi, who's been so good on penalties all year, takes the first for the Dynamo. Now, you could say, and look, this is all hindsight, so this is really easy for me and everybody to do, but we are out there and we want to talk about. Do you put Amin Bassi right up there as the first guy again? He's been your penalty kick ace all year long, but he's been stopped by McMath. McMath could potentially be in his head. And McMath was in his head because Bassi hits a penalty that, it was just stunning. It was hit right at, Amin's penalty was hit right at Zach McMath, and this is to start it off going first, which I always think is a great thing. Here's the Bassi penalty kick.
Bassi. Right at McMath. Hit it right at him. Unbelievable.
So many of you are out there going, yeah, I'm not, we were all surprised because he's so good at penalties. He hadn't missed all year long, to my knowledge. And this one was just basically, I don't know if he was going down the middle. I don't know if he thought McMath was moving. I don't know if he changed his mind on the approach. That's something that happens and you get caught in two minds. Don't know. Only he knows. RSL, winning penalty kick, Diego Luna. This is the guy who scored in the opener in Houston. This is the guy Pablo Mastroeni has been putting a lot of really heavy laudatory words on, and he is a dangerous player. He's built really low to the ground. He's got kind of a boxy build. He scored the tying goal in the first leg, which the Dynamo ultimately won 2-1, but he hits the game-winning penalty to move this to a third game.
Steve Clark, a save or a miss here. It's Luna for Real Salt Lake. Luna whips it in. It'll go to game 3. Back in Houston this Saturday. RSL 5-4 on penalties.
All right, Depeche Mode. Dynamo are going to win it on Saturday. They're going to come back home. They've been great at home. They're going to find that passing rhythm. That's going to be the key. And they're going to have to be efficient because the chances aren't going to come as easily. And we'll do some data. We've got Victor Ariza coming up. We'll continue to talk here. We got some Ben Olsen sound. Got some Eric Sviatchenko sound. But there's no doubt playoff physicality was ratcheted up in Game 2. And Pablo Mastroeni, Ben Olsen. Look, the Dynamo stood up to him physically. The only problem is it disrupted the way they wanted to play.
Is Soccer Matters on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Brought to you by the Daspit Law Firm. From the Veritex Community Bank Studios, here's Glenn Davis.
All right, welcome back to Soccer Matters on ESPN 97.5 as we continue on. Houston Dynamo talk here. Real Salt Lake ended up with 53% of the possession in that game. By the way, if you're watching games, whether it's the Premier League, the Copa Libertadores, UEFA Champions League, Major League Soccer, it's Hugh O'Connor's Pub out on I-10. I-10 Marquee Entertainment Center. You get out there, you talk to Goose, you talk to Dave. Hugh O'Connor's Pub. It's a real authentic pub feel. Great burgers. They got a steak night every Thursday that's exceptional. Great whiskey offering, great beer offerings. Great spot. We've done a lot of live shows out there as well. 713-780-3776 is the number to call in. All right, so get out to Hugh O'Connor's Pub. Our next guest has been out there. He is Victor Ariza, and Victor joins us now. Victor, how are you?
Hey, Glenn. Good. Always nice talking soccer with you here.
All right, so let's talk a little soccer. Frequent guest Victor's been a big part of the show in the past as well. What's the biggest thing on your soccer mind in this very moment?
Oh, obviously the playoffs in MLS. Just kind of trying to see what we get out of this first round. Some crazy games. Kansas City getting through in 2. Obviously, we get a third game with Houston, Salt Lake. We got the other one too coming up with Dallas Sounders. So it's been different between these different series. I like it for what it is. I don't prefer this format, but I've come to enjoy some of it.
Yeah, I think we just got to sit back and enjoy the format. We're not going to change it. It is what it is. I think it's challenging for coaches and teams to get a rhythm. I do think what is revealing, as always, in a playoff system, for instance, I think you and I were talking earlier in the week that I certainly thought, and I think you did too, that Sporting Kansas City was coming in, playing in a very, very good phase here under Peter Vermees. They got people healthy. Polito's active. Johnny Russell's still getting things done. Kinda, you're getting goals from unlikely sources. And they knocked St. Louis out in 2. And St. Louis had been very inconsistent their last half a dozen games. So that, to me, was not a tough call. I did think St. Louis was going to go out in that one. And then, of course, LAFC.
No,
what's that?
Yeah, I was going to say, on the Sporting thing, but there's no reward for having a good season, a good regular season, right? I mean, I'm not saying, you got to steer it completely towards a team like St. Louis, but I guess that's my thing about the format. There's no reward for what you did in the regular season. That's a big knock.
Yeah, but that's old news. I mean, that's old news. We know that. That's just the way MLS goes, right? I mean,
but it rewards the teams that have worse seasons, right? And not to, again, knock St. Louis for what they did, great first expansion year, but it almost does feel like a lot of teams, they're not trying to be first in their conference yet. Yeah, maybe they're trying to be top 4 to have the home field advantage, but a lot of these teams, for the same reason, aren't always in that supporters' shield race because it's really just about getting into the playoffs, and I think that does take away from the regular season a little bit.
Oh, of course it does. And I think that's a challenge for any playoff league. I think some of the urgency doesn't have to be there. No question. You do have time to figure things out. I mean, this format benefited the Houston Dynamo perfectly this year because it allowed the club with 17 changes to methodically go about building their team. And Ben Olsen's been on the show, and it's taken twists and turns that he even didn't know was coming. Of course, finding positionally the right places for people. A very narrow system that ultimately got more width with Griffin Dorsey and the improved play of Nelson Quinones, who now is getting behind people a little bit more consistently. It was always a solid possession team from the start with the likes of Artur and Herrera and Coco. It was always a good defensive team from the start because it was narrow. So when the ball was lost, Griffin Dorsey emerging, I think, was really the major league turning point. I'm not sure everybody wants to admit that, but that to me was a big turning point because opposing teams now had to look at the Houston Dynamo a little bit differently. Listen.
Yeah, Salt Lake paid more attention to him last night for sure.
Well, Salt Lake turned it ugly and made a timely substitution with Chicho Arango. How about some more thoughts from you on that game?
Yeah, I mean, that was my question mark for Paulo Mastroeni. I thought, with a game at home, win or go home, right? Elimination for Salt Lake. I thought Arango would have started if he was, maybe he wasn't completely healthy. I'm not sure of his status, but, with the game that signifies elimination, I mean, because that's the guy that changes the game for Salt Lake. It, gives them clearly an attack, right? And it disrupts what Houston wanted to do. And I think you saw that once he came on. And for me, that gives a little bit of the edge to Salt Lake in this series, because I think, again, you saw what it did for Houston. I know they've been good defensively, but I don't know if they've been tested a lot this season by a prolific goal scorer like that, and certainly a guy that could win an MLS Cup. He did it last year with LAFC. So that to me is the wild card for Saturday for the Dynamo.
Let me stop you there because and you're making some points here. So first of all, they played against Chucho, Klaus, Vela. They played against the leading goal scorer in the league, who's got 30 in all competitions, Denise Bwanga. So I don't agree with you when you say it's the first time they played against a good striker. Back to Arango, Victor, when you talk about him and you thought he would start, I think this is more methodical with guys coming back off injury. And in many cases, maybe the likes of Pablo Mastroeni is saying, look, let's let the two teams beat each other up, and then we're going to insert him at the time when he can have a bigger opportunity to absolutely change the game, and that is later. And that is against maybe players that are beginning to fatigue a little bit more. Don't forget you're at altitude as well. So I think that was a subtle, smart move. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again this weekend. And I think that's all dependent on his injury. But that may be the modus operandi for Pablo Mastroeni and Real Salt Lake is look, come in there, we keep it tight, keep the Dynamo out of their rhythm. We keep trying to produce something through the likes of Luna and Anderson Julio and
some of the. By the way, they did some of the others game with Julio off the bench.
Right, but maybe they start those two guys, and in this case, Arango is your sort of game changer coming off the bench in the latter phases. I mean, a lot of times, look, I think we forget the timeliness of substitutions are important. And there is more thought put into them than we think. It's not just, well, there's 5 subs, and in the 60th minute, we're throwing 3 or 4 guys on. Yeah, there's sometimes you're doing that to get the game chaotic and try and change it around, bring a different energy. But there is more thought that I think that goes into it from these coaches, and more thought has to come into it, especially when you have a player like that that's coming off injury. How much is he really willing to produce? Now, he looked pretty healthy. Can he play 90 minutes? We don't know that. And I think we'll probably know that if he starts on Saturday. And I'm sure the Houston Dynamo are going to be prepared for it either way. Let's take a listen to Eric Sviatchenko, Victor. This is soundbite number 7 on the playoff physicality.
I don't mind it. I think there was no tackles that was outrageous. It was some tackles that were for clear yellows. That's the football. That's the game. Sometimes that both teams want to win, and sometimes you want to win a little bit too much, and then you do a tackle and you get a yellow card. So for me, it's not a problem, and I didn't feel that it was a problem for our team. I think we stood ground and in general kept our cool.
So I'm only going to say one thing, Victor, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. I would just say we have to go back and look at the tackle from Justin Glad, who has been injured, has had a groin injury. He came in the game. His tackle was ill-timed. That was something from Bear Creek Park, or that was a wannabe 2-footed tackle flying through the air. And honestly, he should have been sent off. And that could have been a really big game-changing moment in this series. I haven't heard anybody complain about it, and maybe the Dynamo have, and I missed it. But he should have been sent off. Not only the penalty, but he should have been sent off, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there was a lot of yellows last night too, and Bossy had one early in the game that I think at least on the Apple TV broadcast they were kind of thinking, well, what if this gets looked at, but I think it's difficult for refs, right? I mean, we're seeing it in some of these playoff games, certainly in that Red Bull Cincinnati game, but I think taking that aside, the Dynamo could have closed it out last night. They had moments where they could have gotten the second goal, and I think that's been the story of the season too, right? That they never get that second goal that just kind of puts teams away. They let them linger around, and maybe part of that is because they don't have an out-and-out goal scorer, and we'll see if that ends up hurting them here in the playoffs. But But yeah, I think you're right. And that's part of it too. I mean, that is the playoffs. So managing that, I think they were lucky a little bit too in that sense. Not maybe getting a second yellow for guys like Fiatchenko, Carrasquilla, Bassi, and Dorsey. Not that they were playing aggressive, but just the way that game was, I think they were lucky to get out of there with.
Well, Brian Vera, but I would toss in Brian Vera of Real Salt Lake too. He was lucky not to get a second. By the way, 8 yellow cards in that game. That was a game that had, I think, 35 plus fouls. The game was refereed by Fotis Pazakos. It was meant to be made ugly by Real Salt Lake and intense and competitive. That's going to be the same thing on Saturday at 5 o'clock. And again, the big question is, can the Dynamo find that sort of passing rhythm and get a better grip on controlling the game with the ball, which is what we have seen beautifully from them this year. Victor, you want to stick with us through the break here and listen to some sound from Ben Olsen? We'll do a little reaction, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so Victor Rise is going to remain with us. We'll take a break here. Mind you, show presented by John Daspit and the Daspit Law Firm, daspitlaw.com. John and his firm, personal injury attorneys, 24/7. They're going to work nights and weekends for you. You get in a car accident, boat, motorcycle, construction. These are uncomfortable times. You need the best in a personal injury attorney, and it is the Daspit Law Firm. I'm also going to tell you a little bit of a story today that concerns me and the University of Pittsburgh. Real fun. Take a break here. Pair of tickets right now. 713-780-3776. 713-780-3776. Caller number 5 right now.
Brought to you by the Daspit Law Firm, daspitlaw.com. From the Veritex Community Bank Studios, here's Glenn Davis.
All right, welcome back to Soccer Matters. We're going to lift the tempo just like the Houston Dynamo are against Real Salt Lake. The Dynamo are going to knock them off Saturday back at home. Get ready for it, 5 o'clock Central Time. We got a lot of winners here tonight that we have been very excited to get tickets to them. We've got Dustin, 2 Dustins, and an Eric have won the tickets tonight. So congratulations to Dustin, and Eric for winning tickets here tonight for the Dynamo Real Salt Lake playoffs. If you want to purchase them, HoustonDynamo.com. That's where you go get your tickets and get down there. There's finality. That's going to be a big one down there. The environment was excellent in Game 1 when the Dynamo won 2-1. All right, let's get some sound here from Ben Olsen. Victor Ariza remains with us. Here's Ben Olsen on playoff soccer.
I'm going to keep mentioning that this is playoff soccer, and there's real energy and commitment and more fouls, more tackles, so we have to find a way to combat that. Then there's still some connections out there that would have allowed us to, I think, expose them in a more dangerous way, and that just wasn't there on the night. But again, that's okay. That's what this looks like sometimes, and I love the expectations now that the Houston Dynamo have.
Well, that's what we want, right? We want high expectations. I don't think there's any question from Ben there, and he said this is playoff soccer. So when you talk about that, Victor, I think it goes back to the point you made earlier about the regular season. When you have a playoff system, you can take your foot off the pedal a little bit throughout the year with injury and with trying to put your team together, and you got to time it right. St. Louis didn't time it right. Sporting Kansas City's timing it right. The Dynamo coming into the playoffs, timing it right. So there you go. I think Ben Olsen pretty much lets you know that this thing gets ratcheted up in the playoffs.
Absolutely, and we mentioned. I mean, they were, about less than 45 minutes away from moving along, right? Having maybe an extra week of rest. Now they got to play another game on Saturday where they, the season could end for them. I know we're expecting them to win, and hopefully it all goes their way. But one bad day, puts an end to all of this, and there is that expectation because of what we've seen them do, because of the players they have as well, right? Herrera, Carrasquilla, and I think we all agree that compared to Salt Lake, this is a better roster that should, with the home field advantage, go on to the next round.
So just to do some numbers. By the way, the numbers and the data changed a lot when Arango came in the game towards RSL, but the Dynamo only had 75% passing accuracy. That's lower than normal. RSL had 84. They actually had more total passes than the Houston Dynamo, 371 to 314, if you like data. The Dynamo had 5 shots on goal to 3. 14 shots overall for Salt Lake, only 7 for the Dynamo, but 5 out of 7 on target. And the possession went 53-46 in favor of Salt Lake. We told you about, all the differing fouling and the breaking up of the game. And that's what they're going to do again here in Houston. They're going to want to break the rhythm of the Dynamo. They're going to do it through physicality. The Dynamo are going to have to hope that they get the protection that they feel they deserve from a referee when it comes to their style of play. So it's a big one on the weekend. We're going to see what happens with the Dynamo and RSL. And by the way, to your point, yeah, the Dynamo, I think things could have been a lot easier for them in games this year if, in fact, they could have gotten that second goal for sure. And even if you go to the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, that was so dominant in the first 45 minutes, the Dynamo over Inter Miami. I mean, they should have taken 3 goals out of that first half. That thing would have been done and dusted. And then all of a sudden you get an Inter Miami goal from Josef Martinez late, and your heart's beating a little bit. So timeliness of goals, taking their chances, being efficient, and that has been something that also Ben Olsen has brought out when he's talking about the Houston Dynamo and RSL. All right, let's do some sound here, Victor, and I want to get some of your reaction here. So first off, Phil Neville is going to be the new coach of the Portland Timbers. Here's Phil Neville speaking after getting the job in the Rose City.
First things first, I've got to say it's probably one of my proudest days in football to be named head coach of this great organisation. I was fortunate enough in the last couple of months to have many opportunities, many coaching opportunities to take, and from the minute I met Ned and Merritt and saw the city, saw the club, in my life I've always followed my gut, and my gut said straight away that I had to follow this dream of becoming the Portland Timbers head coach, and when I got the news that I was the head coach, I think it was the best news that I'd had.
So that was Phil Neville. Now here's a guy that's represented England 59 times, played over 260 games for Manchester United, over 240 for Everton, and his proudest moment is being named the head coach of the Portland Timbers. I mean, you got to say the right things, and I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. But come on, you play 59 times for England. You've played in some of the most significant games in your career that very few even get to participate in. So, that was a little bit. He's been a commentator too on BBC, and he's done a whole lot of different things. He was involved with Canada's staff. He was the Inter Miami coach. So how much do we think this is about name? We had a name choice in Houston that was made by in the past when Owen Coyle got picked, and there was this real seduction that took advantage of people who didn't really know football who hired him because of the Premier League. How much do you think it's about that? And I would also say Phil Neville has done some good things. He does understand MLS, I would think, after 2 years at Inter Miami.
Yeah, I think maybe similar to Ben Olsen, right? His career as a player, in Neville's case, is something that helps as well, getting a second chance in a different market, maybe ownership or the GM up there in Portland thinks that, maybe he had dealt a hard hand in Miami, right? We saw what that roster was earlier this year. They didn't quite have everything in order, but I guess only time will tell. I mean, that's the only thing I can say in that sense. But there's not a lot of fans that are very optimistic about this. It's the biggest thing, right? So he's arriving in Portland with not the most gracious of welcomes.
Hold on, Victor. Hold on. Is there a backlash from Portland Timbers fans about him? I don't know why. I mean, he could end up being very, very good for them. I mean, what do they want? To go outside of the league and pick somebody that's never been in MLS? I mean, there is some safety to the fact that he has already coached Inter Miami in this league.
right? But he hadn't, he hasn't. Other than that, I mean, it's like he succeeded in the playoffs, right? I'm not in that market completely to be able to tell you, how the Savarese thing went over, but that was a guy that got you to a couple of MLS Cup finals, right? So maybe, maybe fans felt, somebody that could get you back to that, right? I mean, MLS, Portland was competing. I mean, we're talking about them in Seattle, right? In these last few years, it was either one of those two getting to the MLS Cup final, and I think that's sort of the expectation in Portland. And why not? With the fan base that they have, to shoot for that, and with a coach that hasn't necessarily been successful in MLS, why should they believe that Phil Neville's going to be the guy to take them to another MLS Cup final?
Well, first of all, Savarese, as much as we all love him as a coach and his personality and everything, he lost his team. I mean, you saw that right here in Houston. That team, whatever was going on there, the change had to be made because you had players that weren't running that night, and it was right in front of me, including Evander. When the Dynamo smoked Portland. So, it all depends on the options. So if you don't like Neville and you don't like the fact that Neville, I mean, I think the one thing is he's got prior MLS experience at Inter Miami, but then who would you want?
Well, that's the thing, right? And I think we sort of see, we had it here last year, right? We sort of see this recycling of coaches around MLS teams. Very few really go outside of the bubble and bring somebody new in, maybe the way Atlanta did it, right, with Martino. Just somebody different, a new air, somebody that's won championships in other cultures. I think, again, you have the whole world to pick from, and when you see teams recycling some of these coaches, I just think maybe that's sort of the thinking, but time will tell. Maybe Phil Neville, maybe this is his opportunity, much like Ben Olsen had a good first year here. Maybe Phil Neville will have things up and running in Portland next year.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. So we'll see what Phil Neville does in Portland. By the way, there were an awful lot of people who were not very high on Ben Olsen when he was signed. They wanted something more glamorous, and he's turned out to be pretty good. Him and his staff have put together a really, really good team. And I know everybody's long in the tooth about what happened in, Salt Lake or Sandy this past week. But look, I have a feeling they're going to come out. They're going to play exceptional this weekend. They're going to win Game 3. And then that will set up a home game against Sporting Kansas City. Victor, thank you very much for coming on tonight.
Thanks, Sam. Anytime.
All right, Victor Ariza. Good stuff there. That's his Rocks Off by the Rolling Stones. John Daspit Law Firm, presenting sponsor, Soccer Matters, ESPN 97.5. Coming up next, the head coach at Texas A&M, G. Guerreri. They are in the NCAA tournament.